Let's talk about the last bastion of discrimination in the West, and that is rural white um, people, especially men. Uh, you know, just recently on Saturday Night Live, they did a series of sketches known as Appalachian Emergency Room. Well, you would never see them do a women's emergency room or black emergency room. So why is it all right to do Appalachian emergency room? It's because it's fair game to rip on Southern people, especially men. And I'm talking about, people from the Appalachian Mountains, people from the South, and the Ozarks. These are known as rednecks. And while Jeff Foxworthy has made a lot of money talking about rednecks, he does it from the perspective of being a redneck himself. And, so I believe that's different. I think Jeff Foxworthy is very funny because there are funny things about people in every walk of life. My point is, though, that why is it fair game in our culture to ridicule rural Southern white people and specifically men? So, in trying to deconstruct this, let's go back to the 1800 census in the United States, where they tracked such things as free white people. And if you examine that, you will find that there were hundreds and thousands of white people living in what is known today as rural areas. And how did these people take care of their families? That is really the essential question here. Because if you can ridicule a population, you can also ridicule the way they make money. But in 1800, that's really important for you to understand that there were hundreds of thousands of white people living in areas that we know as the South, or basically redneck areas. And the first thing that the new Congress did around that era was because the government had been institutionalized, they needed a way to pay for their institution. And so they chose as their first tax to tax alcohol. And, you can understand that from their point of view. But what about all the people who were making a living by producing alcohol in these rural areas? Well, that's why we have stories about the revenuers and people chasing those who had a still. But let's really look at that, and I want to use a tune that you're probably familiar with if you've ever seen the Andy Griffith Show. They had a band on there known as the Dillards. And on the show, they were the Darlings, and the Darling family showed up every once in a while because it made for interesting stories. But their famous song is called Dooley, and Dooley is about a moonshiner. And I want you to hear some of the words from that song. So, Dooley was a good old man. He lived below the mill. Dooley had 2 daughters and a 40-gallon still. One gal watched the boiler, the other watched the spout, and Mama corked the bottles as old Dooley fetched them out. So the first thing that you need to understand is that moonshining in the old days was a family business. Okay, it was a business. Because the song goes on to say, Dooley was a trader. When into town he'd come, sugar by the bushel and molasses by the ton. So not just being a family business, this was a business that, was the backbone of the economy in these rural areas. And that influences everybody beyond the moonshiners. So, and I use this to say that this describes the reason why Southern men are conservative. They're conservative because they want the government out of their business. I have a dear, dear friend, and by the way, I want to say that I am very, very proud to live in Alabama and to have the words "Roll Tide" come out of my mouth from time to time. There's a great deal of pride amongst Southerners, and especially Southern men. So I have this friend who has always lived here and grown up here, and he votes Republican. So I asked him one time, why do you, as a poor kind of man, support Republicans who are dead set against helping poor people? First of all, my friend doesn't consider himself to be poor. In fact, he considers himself to be very rich. So why does he vote Republican? Here's what he said to me. Terry, it seems to me that I have more money in my pocket when Republicans are in charge of the government. So again, it comes back to basic self-interest and self-preservation of these rural people who live in areas that we basically make fun of. And that's a really stupid thing to do. And, it's also very, very discriminatory. Why do we allow that? So white Southern men, and I include Appalachian areas and the Ozarks, vote conservative. We used to have a group of people in Congress who were conservative Democrats. They were known as the Blue Dogs, and I think the Blue Dog Coalition still exists, but it doesn't have any kind of clout. So while you can say that Southern men used to vote Democrat, they voted only for conservative Democrats because conservative Democrats spoke their language, spoke their voice. Get out of my wallet. And that is the message from Southern men who vote Republican. Of course, this is a complex issue with lots and lots of exceptions. So I have to always say that I could be wrong because I'm just a common Terry.